Hey loves, it's Britt, and in this video I wanted to talk about the natal chart aspect Saturn square or opposite Uranus in the birth chart. So I've been meaning to do this video for a while because you guys have requested it, and I think that these outer planet aspects, they're often missed or they're just not talked about enough. So I love to really get into these. So these aspects show that there's tension between the past and the future of the person, and also between like the conservative or like tradition loving parts of the personality and the eccentric or rebellious parts of the personality. So there's often a big challenge in like a need to break free from the family patterns and the upbringing and everything that's, gone on with the early life or potentially the father as well. There's a need to like break free from those, but also a need to like have allegiance to them. And so there's like a struggle between being themselves and the like rebellious qualities that they have, or the more quirky or like creative qualities that they have, and also remaining connected to like the status quo and like the upbringing and like the early messages. So what can end up manifesting is that there's a personality or a person that is insecure about those more forward thinking aspects that they have. And so they struggle to embody them in a healthy way, like to really allow themselves to be that, like, kind of more Aquarian or like Uranian personality, right? So there can be a lot of inner tension. And something I've noticed with this aspect is like if it's connected to houses that are visible or like to do with the physical body, it can show like tension, like kind of like with the bones, like arthritis, or like from being really like holding on tight to like these traditions or past patterns, and like there's an inflexibility, I guess, that can sometimes manifest with these aspects, and then that can lead to these sort of health problems to do with the body, or just like random unfortunate events like injuries and stuff like that that totally like hold back the forward thinking part of the person. So like it could be to do with the legs or something too, or the feet, like where they struggle to move forward. So they can end up, because of this like inner tension, sometimes attracting this like inability to like make those concrete steps towards their future because of actual like physical incapabilities, right? So that's just like a very extreme manifestation that sometimes happens. It's not going to manifest like that all the time, but it definitely can. I've definitely seen that. Also, I should mention that the opposition, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong here on this, you might know this better than me, but I think the opposition has only happened in the mid 1960s when Saturn was in Pisces and Uranus was in Virgo. I can't like as far as people that are alive now, maybe there's some that were earlier that I'm just missing, but I'm pretty sure like the only people that I've seen with the opposition are born in that 1960s period when Saturn was in Pisces and Uranus was in Virgo. So I could be wrong. You guys can correct me on that if I'm wrong. But the square has occurred multiple times in the last however many years. A lot of people do have the square because the square happens more commonly, right? So, and the differences are not really many. Sometimes the opposition can manifest in more extreme ways to eventually get the person to realize what is going on, though. So it's like it can be more intense, but then more easily resolved when we have the opposition, because there is more harmony inherent in signs that are opposite than signs that are square. The square is more like a constant frustration and tension. And actually, another thing about the opposition is that the opposition can be like a lot more where like they go back and forth between the two extremes, where like sometimes they're Saturn and sometimes they're Uranus, and they kind of flip from the two archetypes, right? So that can also manifest with the opposition. And then the square is more just like a constant tension between the two of like, we don't quite know which one to really put our all into. Like, are we going to go full on, like doing what the family says, doing what the world says, doing what society says, or are we going to go full on, like rebel, crazy person, like, so it's like, yeah, more like that with the square, like constant tension. So these people are really interesting. Like you'll notice, and actually all aspects of Saturn to Uranus, like the conjunction too, which I will talk about. But yeah, like people with these aspects are kind of like buzzing with electricity, and they can seem like they're not energetically, they're not fully grounded into the now. And that is something that can really help alleviate the tension of these aspects, is proper grounding and being able to like connect to the earth, like going and touching a tree or putting your feet right on, like barefoot on the earth or something like that. Because that is kind of a problem with these aspects, is that there's a lot of like Uranian electricity is like running through the body, and it can actually produce anxiety, and it can like if there's too much stagnation, like for example sitting at a desk all day, or just not a lot of movement or not a lot of freedom, it's like they can really feel a lot of anxiety, a lot of tension, because Saturn represents like the structure in our life, right? And we have to listen to Saturn in order to feel like we're on path and we're doing, we're clearing the karma that we came here to clear, right? And that has a lot to do with security and our inner security and or insecurity or fear, right? So Saturn has a lot to do with fears. Now, when Uranus is making these hard aspects to Saturn, it's like there's always something kind of blocking us from having that, like those roots going into the earth, right? Like that groundedness of belonging on this earth, like that is a root chakra thing. And that's something that they really need to work on in this lifetime, is like feeling that place, that root chakra security and grounding into this earth, right? And sometimes doing these actual physical things can help, although, some other kinds of belief work might also be required here, because there's a big need for like recognizing and accepting the self, and especially those quirky parts of the self, right? Those parts of the self that they were shamed for early on, early in childhood, or even this could be coming from past lifetimes. And you could have even seen maybe in past lifetimes they were actually like doing the shaming on someone else or something, and now this is like a karmic repercussion. Now you don't know, you'd have to like do a full past life regression, but there definitely could be something like that going on with these aspects. And so it's like in this lifetime they have to learn how to accept those contradictory parts of themselves and love those contradictory or revolutionary parts of themselves, to allow them to be expressed, and like allowing yourself to be those parts of you that your early upbringing and childhood said were bad, or said were, too much, or crazy or wild or whatever. Letting yourself like be that energy, as scary as it is, and it's going to bring up fear, it's going to bring up like sometimes even full on like heart racing, like terror, to like be those aspects. But when you allow yourself to embody that, that's where the freedom is going to come in, the freedom that you seek, and also the security, because you're not really meant or made for a normal life path with these aspects. You're here to bring something new that is groundbreaking, that is revolutionary into this earth. And in order to do that, you have to be able to be your true self and like remove those early messages that is something that's shameful or not okay, right? And it's easier said than done. The square, like I said, the square is harder as a rule. Usually squares are going to produce more tension, but the opposition can also be a little bit more like a kind of bipolar energy, or like think of the opposition energy as like a full moon aspect, right? So there's like the fullness, right? But then there's so much energy to like resolve it. And then the square is like this aspect of like constant frustrating tension that's less easily resolved, but also potentially even more creative too, although they're both creative aspects. The opposition too can come out more in relationships but the square, you can actually see these same kind of relationships too. So it's interesting. But as a rule, opposition is a relational aspect, right? But yeah, with these aspects, we could see a conflict between wanting to choose a partner who represents tradition and security, and wanting to choose a partner who is exciting and like a soul tie kind of thing, like a more platonic soul tie, versus like the relationship that came from, our early life or high school or something. Like there's a conflict between the past and the future, like I've said, with these aspects. So in relationships, it can be that like it's hard to, and this can be more so for women too with these aspects, because these masculine archetypes can sometimes play out more with women, but you can even see men too struggling between, being that more stable like guy versus being like the total rebel kind of guy, and they're kind of struggling internally with that, or they attract a woman who's kind of hot cold or on off or things like that, weird kinds of relationships or whatever. Especially if it's connecting into Venus or Moon, or for women if this is connecting also into Sun or Mars. Could see conflicts like that. And, a big part of the conflict, though, with this aspect is actually a lot of it is to do with how others are perceiving you. And there can be a lot of judgment with these aspects, like from the outside. People are judging you. And sometimes this isn't just perceived judgment, like there actually is something about you that other people take issue with, because it is groundbreaking. It is unusual. It is like not of this world or something like that. And so people can definitely give you a hard time, especially with the opposition too. People can really take issue with you, and for seemingly no reason. I mean, it's like it's hard to pin down why they would feel like that, but it's like your energy, your presence can make people uncomfortable, because it is like it's a new energy. It's like you're working on transmuting like the old societal programs that are damaging to humanity and bringing in the new, but yet you have both of those within you. And it's like whatever day you wake up, you can choose to be on either side. You're either the old or the new, and you're like having this internal struggle of like which one to be, right? And truthfully, you might be a bit of both archetypes, right? You might really have to work on like allowing those parts of your family or your upbringing, or those early messages and fears, like allowing the constructive parts of that to be in you. Like you take the good out of those beliefs, and then you discard the rest. And you might have to learn how to do that, how to assimilate, like, okay, I'm going to take the good instilled from my early life and upbringing, and I'm going to discard the rest. And then at the same time, allowing myself to be myself, allowing myself to be a little bit out there or different or creative. A big part of this is this huge creative energy. Like I said, it's like electricity running through you. And, it might contradict, or it might go against these early messages, and it might go against, like, your family might hate your art, basically, is like a way to describe what could happen. But you have to do it anyways. You have to be who you are anyways, and that is your medicine, and that is like what you're really here to do. And before you've allowed yourself to do that, that's when there's tension and there's anxiety and there's that, like I said, that constriction, that like lack of flow in your energy, because you're so hung up on not letting those parts of you out, right? But when you realize like all of me is lovable, all of me is okay, and you can relax then, and you can lighten up. And so you'll see, like, as life goes on, people with these aspects become more chill. Like, they start out constricted and having a lot of tension, and then as time goes on and they allow themselves to be more free and be more creative, then they become more relaxed and they become more respected and looked up to rather than looked down on. But it's a process, and these are not easy aspects. These might be some of the hardest aspects, and you can really see huge falls from grace with these aspects. There is a huge need with these aspects to like act in accordance for like what is right for your future. Like you can't like if there's karma that you're here to deal with, you basically have to deal with it, or it's all gonna like hit you in the face, and like there's no escaping the karma that you're here to deal with these aspects. But then once you kind of get the hang of that and you understand it, you can actually burn through a lot of karma a lot quicker than a lot of people with these aspects. So it's very complex. I don't even know if that last part made any sense, but I'm just trying to articulate it. But yeah, very entertaining, very actually charismatic people with these aspects, because like I said, you're holding something that is unusual. You're like the bridge between the old and the new. And when you reconcile that inner tension within you, then you become in your power and grounded, and your medicine for all of humanity and the planet is very visible from that place. And so when we're talking the outer planets, we are talking about like collective energy, right? So that's why, I talked a lot about like what you're doing for society and what you're doing for the collective, because with like Uranus is always about like the collective, right? And Saturn is like the past, and Uranus is kind of like the future. So that's like where all of this is from. So like if you have these aspects and you want to hide away and you want to be introverted and you want to be not seen, and there's many different potentials of a birth chart, like I'd have to look at your natal chart, but likely with these aspects you actually are meant to be seen, and you are meant to kind of be in a position where people are noticing you and learning from you, and there's leadership in these aspects. So yeah, I'd love to know your experience of these natal chart aspects. If you have either one of them, what has it been like for you? I'd love to know. And thank you so much for watching, and thank you for the requests. Love you guys, and talk soon.